Hello everyone. Welcome back to another Commander review for Magic the Gathering. Today we are talking about Yomiji, Who Bars the Way from the Betrayers of Kamigawa set. Now we are almost done with this set. This has been a long set, and I'm excited to come to the conclusion for multiple reasons, which I'll talk about at the end of the video. But I'm also excited to be able to finish rounding out these commanders because they are sweet. This one in particular, for Yomiji, is a legendary spirit. It's a 4/4, and it has a mana value of 7, 5 generic and 2 white mana. And then it has a triggered ability. Whenever a legendary permanent other than Yomiji is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to its owner's hand. Essentially, the shortened version of this would read, whenever a legendary permanent other than Yomiji dies, return that card to its owner's hand. But I think there are other implications of putting things into graveyards aside from it dying, which is why I think it's worded that way. But that's essentially what you'll see most often, is when a legendary permanent dies, it will go back to its owner's hand. Now, a couple things to note with this commander. No card rulings for this commander, but be very mindful that this is a very powerful effect. It's a great way to protect your legendary permanents if you want to do a Legend Tribe deck. However, it benefits everyone at the table. Whenever a legendary permanent other than Yomiji, Who Bars the Way, is put into a graveyard from play. So this works for every legendary permanent, yours and your opponent's. So be mindful of that, because obviously all the commanders your opponents will have, whether they're creatures, planeswalkers, vehicles now, as well as legendary spacecraft that have printed power and toughness, all of those can now be commanders, but all of them have one thing in common. They're all legendary. So when those permanents go to the graveyard, they will go back to their opponent's hand. So be very careful of that, because especially if you're going up against an aristocrat opponent who wants things to die, that could be very bad against you. So make sure that you are prepared to take the most advantage from that, or have ways to gain advantage without giving your opponents that bonus. So there's a couple ways that we're going to play around with that. But just be mindful of that. That's the biggest thing I'll say about this card, is it is a group hug commander for protecting legendary permanents, including your opponents. But with cards like Stone of Eric or Stone of Erech, I'm not sure how to pronounce that word or name, we can just exile our opponent's stuff instead. And what we would do, let's see, if a creature an opponent controls would die, exile instead. So that replacement effect will happen because it's replacing the death of a creature, which means it will not trigger Yomiji, Who Bars the Way, which is good to know, because this is how you can prevent your opponents from benefiting from Yomiji's ability. By exiling your opponent's creatures specifically, it will prevent them from getting the benefit of Yomiji, which is really nice. Now bear in mind, when we're talking about your opponent's commanders, they still can do legendary planeswalkers that say this can be your commander, and then any vehicles or spacecraft that have the printed power toughness on it that are legendary. There are 3 other card types you have to be mindful of that could be commanders nowadays. So this only gets rid of 1/4 of the legendary commander types. However, about 90% of all the legal commanders right now are creatures, so you should be pretty fine statistically speaking there. And there are other ways to bypass this as well, but this is one of the ones that popped up on the list, and I really liked it. Speaking of Planeswalkers specifically, the deck that I am building for with this commander is a Planeswalker deck. One of the cool things that Planeswalkers can do is they have this ultimate ability, and usually how it works is you work your way up to that ultimate ability, and then when you use the ultimate ability, it either will kill the Planeswalker, or it will bring them low enough that they're easy targets for your opponents. But a great way to protect all of your Planeswalkers is to have Yomiji's ability, so that way when they would go to the graveyard, they go to your hand instead, and then you can play them and do it all over again, which is really, really cool. So lots of Planeswalkers, lots of ways to defend your Planeswalkers, and fill the board with creatures to protect your Planeswalkers and build this crazy engine. A popular deck idea on EDH Rec is taking advantage of legendary permanents that want to be sacrificed, like Mindslaver wants to be sacrificed, so you can steal your opponent's turns. Wrath's Edge is a legendary land that lets you just slowly deal damage over time, and then I don't remember why I have Birth of Melodies in here. Why do I have Birth of Melodies on this list? I'm not sure. I think what I was trying to do was look for if and when the time comes that we get legendary sagas, I think is why I put this on the list. I think maybe this was a historic. This is a commander that would be great for historic decks. However, it specifically does not, Yomiji specifically does not work with sagas. It only works with the legendary super type. However, there are legendary sagas, I believe, that have come out. Ooh, let me just check. Legendary saga. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah. It looks like all the legendary sagas we have right now. The only one, the only traditional, we have a lot of Final Fantasy sagas that just came out, but a lot of those are designed to flip back to their creature side, which is kind of null and void. But we do have from the, what was the set called? This was the horror set. Duskmourn, House of Horror. There is a legendary saga called The Tale of Tamio, and that would also work with this commander because oh no, this wouldn't work because it's blue. Oh no, I'm a fool! So there are no currently any legendary sagas that would sacrifice themselves normally. So the only reason why this is on the list is because historic, which is an archetype you can build around, cares about legendaries, artifacts, and sagas. This commander in particular, just remember, it only cares about legendary specifically. It does not care about historic. So sagas will not necessarily work with this commander. And then a weird janky build around deck idea that I thought would be fun would be a flip or transform strategy. Because a lot of these things when they flip, for example, Catilda, Dawnheart Martyr will transform into Catilda's Rising Dawn. However, at the bottom there it says, if Catilda's Rising Dawn will be put into the graveyard. Oh, I misread that initially. So when Catilda's Rising Dawn would go to the graveyard, it gets exiled instead. So that one does bypass Yomiji's ability, unfortunately, unless I'm misreading that. But a card like Kithian, who transforms into Gideon, would be a lot of fun. And then obviously Halvar and Sword of the Realms would be fun. And the reason why I'm pulling this up is because we have a lot of double-faced cards. We don't have a lot of double-faced legendary cards. We got a bunch more from Final Fantasy, thank goodness. But there's not a ton of mono-white legendary double-faced cards. So the idea that I think would be fun to build around in the future would be a legendary double-faced deck. Because a lot of these double-faced stuff like Kithian or Gideon is when Gideon goes to the graveyard, you can recur it back to your hand, play it for Kithian, and then repeat it over again. Or to get the value. Or another example would be Halvar or Sword of the Realms. And this is a fun example because if for some reason your opponent gets rid of the Sword of the Realms, and then you get it back to your hand. You actually don't have to play Sword of the Realms. You could play Halvar and have the creature instead, so it gives you like options to play with. So not the best deck idea by far, but I think this would be fun if we get more support in the future. When I eventually get to doing the deck list for this commander, I have no idea how I'm going to do this deck. It will be very interesting to try and figure out, because we definitely do not have a lot of white legendary permanents that are double-faced. So I'm very curious to see how I'm going to try and figure this out. But either way, I think this would be an interesting deck idea. Doesn't have to necessarily be this commander that does it, but it would be cool because there are legendary permanents that do transform or have a double face side. I think it'd be interesting to try. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I do think that this is a weird, janky build around for sure, but I think it could be interesting for your group if that's what you're into. And that is going to do it for this commander. It's very expensive. It helps everyone at the table, but it's a great way to accept yours. Commanders can't die except yours. Oh, yeah. I see what I'm doing there. So the strength of this card is commanders can't die. Like I said earlier, this is a great way. This is cool because it keeps all the commanders going, essentially. But that is also kind of group hug. And it is important to note that it does not protect itself. It does not recur itself back to your hand. So when it dies, you have to have other ways of protecting it or reanimating it, so that way you can also benefit. So bear that in mind. With that said, this is a very popular commander. There's a lot of deck ideas on EDH Rec that you can go check out and build your own interesting take on this commander, which is why it does have the rank of S. And we're going to see on our set review how crazy that is, because there's a lot of S rank cards in this set. But I'm very excited to play with this card. I'm very excited to hear your guys' comments about the weird transform double-faced legendary deck idea, just because, again, we definitely do not have the support for that right now, but you can build a mono-white Legends deck. It would just be interesting to see how double-faced legendary permanents factor into that, essentially. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Like I mentioned earlier, there are deck lists. They are slow. I'm trying to get through them as fast as I can and maybe try and find a more efficient way to get deck lists out that won't be so time consuming. But I am getting those out as fast as I can, so you can start heading back to some of my older videos and checking those deck lists out. Also bear in mind that this is going to be the end of this set. After the next video, we have one more commander in this set. When we do the set review and then we get into the Saviors of Kamigawa, I'm going to change my formatting for that, because I want to try and make these a little bit faster, more focused on what the commander is and what the commander does, and then just talk about one or two different deck ideas, just so I can really focus on the card itself, which will also mean I can try and make these shorter videos so I can get more out to you guys on a more regular basis. And then I think there was one other thing I want to say, but I think it has more to do with spreading these out amongst my Let's Play videos so I can get some buffer room, because work is still crazy right now. I'm trying to get on top of videos, but I think I'm getting pretty close to that. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for all your support. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!